Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Time for a quick recap of the week, which was a big one for Trump and diplomacy. Two words that go together like fire and Chicago 1871. Trump was overseas this week meeting with his favourite authoritarians. He joked with Putin about meddling in US elections, called Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman a friend of mine, and just this morning popped across the DMZ to North Korea with Kim Jong-un, while seemingly being thrilled that he'd been invited over.
It's just an honour to be with you, and it was an honour that you asked me to step over that line, and I was proud to step over the line. I thought you might do that. I wasn't sure, but I was ready to do it, and I want to thank you. It's been great.
Oh, that's actually nice. So Trump wanted to step over the line, was ready to do it, but waited until he received affirmative consent. What a refreshing change of pace for him. Maybe Trump's mantra going forward should be treat women with the same respect you show murderous autocrats. He's growing. Good for him. And the other big international diplomacy news of the week concerns Jared Kushner, Slenderman's weird nephew. Jared's Middle East peace plan has now been over 2 years in the making, and even before taking office, Trump was hyping it like this.
If you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can. Okay? All my life, I've been hearing that's the toughest deal in the world to make. And I've seen it. But I have a feeling that Jared is going to do a great job.
Of course he is! Jared's racked up an impressive list of accomplishments in his 38 years on Earth, from having a very smooth, shiny face to end of list. Well, this week, Jared announced his Peace to Prosperity plan during a conference in Bahrain with a stirring speech.
The Peace to Prosperity vision is a modern framework for a brighter and more prosperous future.
The man is a once-in-a-generation orator. He's like Cicero reincarnated as a garbage disposal. And look, while that may not be Jared's real voice, what he presented this week is also not a real plan. It is a vision that fits somewhere between economic wish list and half-remembered rich boy wet dream. Because essentially, it describes hypothetical investments in Palestine and its neighbours worth more than $50 billion once peace is achieved. But achieving peace is the really important part. Without that, you got nothing. And Jared punted announcing that part of the plan until later this year. And the more you listen to him talk about his vision, the less he seemed to actually say.
So how do we begin to make this change? We need the right plan, and we need to create the right environment. If we have a real peace and there's not a fear of people doing terrorism, then all of a sudden we can really thin the borders and allow for a much faster flow of goods and people.
Yes, after years of thinking about it, Jared's arrived at the conclusion that the Middle East would be better off if people stopped doing terrorism. And just think about the chain of events that led him to that moment. Jared had that idea, no doing terrorism, and thought, that's an awesome point, I'm going to write that down. So he did, and then he went to sleep, exhausted by the thought. He woke up the next morning, read what he'd written, and he was like, yep, nailed it, I'm a good boy. Then he said that point, unembarrassed, out loud in front of actual human beings, which should be humiliating. And look, I'm far from the only one critical of his plan. Dan Kurtzer, a former ambassador to Israel, reportedly said, I would give this so-called plan a C- from an undergraduate student, although I doubt that actually bothers Jared, because a C- is the trust fund boys' A+. And to give you some sense of Jared's odds of success, I should point out no Palestinian government officials attended Jared's conference, possibly because they don't see Jared or Trump as neutral mediators. And why would they? Jared's family is so close to Netanyahu, the Prime Minister once stayed at their home and slept in Jared's bedroom. In what I'd imagine was Jared's race car bed under a shelf of other kids' soccer trophies that his dad bought for him. And it's not just that. The Trump administration has recognised Jerusalem as Israel's capital and cut hundreds of millions in aid to the Palestinians. And when Netanyahu got wind that Trump was going to recognise the Golan Heights as part of Israel, he responded like this.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that he is naming a controversial new settlement in the Golan Heights after the man he calls his good friend, Donald Trump.
That must have been the fastest, easiest decision in Israeli history. How should we thank Trump? I don't know, just slap his name on a sign, he'll love it. Oh shit, the Golan Heights just went bankrupt. We probably should have seen that coming. But maybe the clearest sign of just how poorly thought out Jared's approach is comes from this Palestinian olive farmer. A few years ago, he proposed a joint venture between Palestinians and Israelis, only to see his project then defunded by the Trump administration. And Jared's plan contained a special surprise just for him.
Junaidi is still bitter at how the administration treated his project. So imagine his surprise when we told him that his face was being used in the glossy White House brochure promoting Jared Kushner's peace plan.
Did you know that they're using your image in these proposals? The Kushner plan, yeah.
لا ما بعرفش.
You didn't know that they're using your face?
لا.
Yeah. This is the report. This is the White House website. That's you, right?
هذا الكلام هذا شغل مجانين.
Wow. You know you're fucking up your peace process when you can't even get an actual olive farmer to extend an olive branch. But in the end, that olive farmer may have summed up Jared's proposals better than anyone else.
Kushner is very bad student. He don't know nothing.
Exactly! He is right, because if you didn't know it before this week, it's now painfully clear that the only way Jared's getting peace in the Middle East is if he somehow stumbles upon a button in the woods labelled Middle East Peace Button. And even then, there's only around a 50-50 chance that he knows enough to fucking press it.
It is Tuesday, the 2nd of July of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. I should let you know that we do roast the corn before we put it into the chowder, and indeed, now you know, there is corn in the chowder, otherwise it would not be Tarrytown Chowder. Wow. Well, a little bit of background information on that one always helps on a day like this. Tanks on the National Mall. What's next? Submarines in the reflecting pool? Huh? The mind reels. Tanks. Trump is convinced the Abrams tank is the new Sherman tank. Sherman. Abrams, Sherman. I don't know, they're all the same. Names. Wow. Well, that's what happens when you go to a military-themed school rather than an actual military school. This guy is a bone spur draft dodger. I mean, give me a break. It's always those types that want to have tanks on the National Mall to honor themselves. Yeah, this guy's Napoleon. This guy's a Shah of Iran. He wants to put the crown on himself, and he has. Look at that hair. That's not hair, that's some sort of crown. And it fits rather ill, I would say. Obviously not fit for the station. Obviously. All right. Well, you know, Western liberal tradition counted on an informed, knowledgeable public in which to rule themselves. So no wonder autocrat rich boys want, I don't know, everybody to be stupid. Or at least a lot more stupid than they are. All right. To a vast majority of people, I think about 60 million or so, Trump is rather quite intelligent to them, which says everything you know or need to know about anti-intellectualism in America and its long-standing tradition. You have Western liberal tradition on the one hand, and then you have anti-intellectualism on the other, and look who's on each side. It hasn't ever changed. My God. Okay. Is this guy even landed gentry? Man, can you imagine some, I don't know, nincompoop slapping his name on some property back in feudal Europe? Saying, yeah, I'm part of you now. Here, let my daughter talk about state affairs with your royalty. I don't think they would go very far. And I kind of think that they're experiencing it a little bit when they go back to, old Europe. Oh, my God. As I mentioned yesterday, the French foreign minister gave the best side eye I've seen for a long time. And as I tried to express yesterday, women in France of a certain age give the best one. And the next one is the pursed lip in the tisk-tisk, a little breathing in like a... I can't do it, but it's rather unique. And I have to say, mostly to the French, maybe Parisians. But I've seen it in the provinces too. But then you find out they came from Paris. So maybe it is a Parisian tick. I always liked it. And Ivanka deserved it. Yep. Apparently people are calling for her to resign. What? Being the daughter? I don't know. What is their job? Do they even have a job? They're just there. All right. Well, that was at the top, John Oliver, just ripping Trump and Jared to shreds. And good thing, too. If anybody deserves it, it's those two. Yes. And I was so happy that he did, aren't you? Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? We got a little bit of a show today, so maybe we won't give as much of an introduction and a rant as we are wont to do. Here in the salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, well, Texas Republicans passed a law to hide evidence of their illegal power grabs. Yeah. You need a law to be able to break the law. That's Texas for you. U.S. Democratic Senator from Nevada, Jacky Rosen, announced she would block 2 of Trump's nominees for positions in the DHS over the horrendous conditions for kids in his concentration camps. And yeah, I said it. I went there. And former National Security Advisor Susan Rice called Trump's lie about Obama and North Korea shall I say it in this early in the morning? Yes, horse shit. It's a barnyard epitaph. There's always chores in the barnyard now, isn't there? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where Russia called on Trump to agree to a prisoner swap, or else what? Yeah, there might be a little warm beer incident. Never know, it could be convenient. And it is especially perverse for Harvard to hire toxic people like Rick Snyder in the name of civility. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the page is our link to our Patreon site. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, your recurring contribution really helps us continue resisting as the founders originally intended. We not only have a responsibility and a duty, it is, well, I don't know what else to call it, a responsibility and our duty to this great experiment to resist and elect more and better Democrats. That is truly our mission statement. I wonder where we've heard that before. It is such a truism. But regardless, thank you for your generosity in allowing us to continue this operation for the last 8 years of 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio. And once again, we would be unable to do this without you. So thank you. Follow the Netroots Radio on Twitter. I'll get it out. Follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio, and we thank Tom for taking care of that. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then I get it out there on social media, so look for it there as well. The link, by the way. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and I figure wherever podcasts can be found, every single one in the world, we're there, down in the W's. We're right there. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, I don't know. I'd mentioned at the introduction part that I shouldn't really dally too much because we do have some relevant news of the day. But I came across a photograph of my son from last August, and it just made me aware of how few photographs we took in the months before he passed. So I looked at it and I was like, I'm so sad. This is like one of the last photographs. And it was all the way in August, and he had passed at the end of December. I mean, there's a couple of more photographs from then, from between those times. A few at the most. Sad. So at his celebration, I had made mention, I got to assist in his birth back in the day when men did not do that. Men didn't even go to the hospital. Get your ass to the hospital yourself, you bitch. I'm going to work and then getting a beer. So that sentiment was still very prevalent. And so for me, it was a momentous, life-affirming, in the most literal sense, event in my life. And it was such a bonding between all of us, in spite of whatever it caused my ex and I to break up. There was still the core of what caused us to be together, and that manifestation was our son. And that was very important to us, regardless of our inability to stay a couple. So we worked it out. But I was so against, this is when video cameras, the first generations were coming out, and I mean, for people to actually buy in the stores rather than hawk their homes for. And it just seemed gauche to me to take a video of the event, or even photographs. And but at his celebration, I had made mention of that, and I actually implored people, take as many pictures as you can, whenever, wherever, do it. You'll never have enough. And so it made me a little sad this morning, but I'm going to pick up because this last Sunday was a celebration, not a mourning. And my son insisted on, laughter and conscious intent too. Good for him. All right. Let's take a look at this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, yes. Well, it comes out of Share Blue Media by Emily Singer. Texas Republicans passed a law that will allow state lawmakers to keep any communications they have about lawmaking secret. So much for open public records. Yes. Well, that's a move transparency advocates warn will allow GOP politicians in charge of redrawing legislative and congressional district maps to avoid charges of illegal gerrymandering. Of course, you're not supposed to draw these maps in some sort of racial, racist, authoritarian, consolidating power. You're not supposed to do it in a discriminatory way. But if there's a record of their communications, You know, sort of like what was found in other states. That guy that died. And it turns out that, the motivation was exactly to benefit Republicans and non-Hispanics. Oh, really now? Texas? Would Texas have any non-Hispanics that maybe might feel threatened by the majority of the population? I'm not talking about others. This is what bothers me when I hear on the message boards here in Southern Oregon about why don't they just go back where they came from. And they don't really mean asylum seekers, and they don't really mean illegal aliens. They mean everybody who's brown because they're obviously illegal asylum seekers. Why are they here? Okay. The new Republican-crafted law, which went into effect earlier this month, allows lawmakers in the state to hide any communications that pertain to any legislative activity or function. And that's according to the Dallas Morning News, a reputable organization of news, except they're still a fake news because they report the facts, and that's obviously fake. There's a small little jump from facts to fake. Call their facts fake. Call their facts their facts. And the gaslighting begins. I hear it already. I see it coming. It's a law that Texas Attorney Joe Larson, who sits on the board of the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas, he said it's a power grab. Well, do you think? Actually, this grabbing's been going on for many, many decades. I remember when Ann Richards was the last Democratic governor, and they grabbed power from her, too. The law will completely allow the legislators to control the message, keep anyone from looking behind the curtain. Back in 2011, Republicans were hit with a lawsuit alleging that GOP lawmakers in the state gerrymandered state legislative and congressional districts in a way that violated federal laws banning racial discrimination. But that's a states' rights issue. If a state wants to racially discriminate, it's their right. You don't have to live there if you don't want to. Yeah, try to move. Well, with this new law, some worry that Republicans would be able to keep those damning communications private, making it harder to prove illegal behavior. I don't know. I thought the Republicans were rather emboldened to just say, yeah, we're racist, so what? In fact, the whole census question is held up because the Trump administration lied about their motivation. Roberts never said, I'm against racial discrimination and gerrymandering. Just don't lie about it. And you know, Trump lawyers right now are drafting a petition to the Supreme Court where they're saying, yeah, we did this census question exactly to discriminate against, well, racial, religious, and whatever people. It's unclear if the new Texas law is legally sound. However, the fact that Republicans are attempting to block communications from public view ahead of the next round of redistricting in 2021 should be concerning. As the saying goes, sunshine is the best disinfectant, and Republicans in Texas are trying to make it impossible to let the sun shine on their behavior. It's a shady move that should leave the public scratching their heads. Well, after being around a Texan who has not been disinfected, you would expect at least scratching your head. Oliver Willis also of Share Blue Media, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Senator Jacky Rosen, Democrat of Nevada, announced that she would block 2 of Trump's nominees for positions in the Department of Homeland Security, citing the horrendous conditions the Trump administration is forcing children to endure in border detention camps. I call them concentration camps, and a lot of other people do too. Seeing babies and toddlers separated from their families and being detained in U.S. government facilities in horrendous conditions is simply unacceptable, Rosen said in a statement last Friday. I am placing a hold on DHS nominees Chad F. Wolf and Troy D. Edgar until the inhumane and substandard conditions for children at DHS processing and detention facilities improve significantly. Wolf has been nominated for Undersecretary for Strategy and Policy, and Edgar was nominated for the position of Chief Financial Officer. Well, since everything is mostly privatized, you're going to take in $700 a day for these detained kids. And you're not spending that $700 on toothpaste, toothbrushes, blankets. Well, isn't that the whole goal of private enterprise? Withhold services to make a profit? And isn't this really the Republican business model? Take government funds. They do the thing that they blame every black and brown person doing. Because they are good people. And if they are able to do this, what about all those bad people out there? What about them? What are they capable of? Rosen placed the holds before the Senate left for the 9-day July 4th recess. Thank you, Jacky. She says the holds on the nominations would remain until a non-governmental third party certifies DHS compliance, stops mistreating children at the facilities. Now, a report in May from the Inspector General for Homeland Security unearthed excessive overcrowding and unhygienic conditions at the El Paso del Norte processing center in Texas. The report described dangerous overcrowding where 900 migrants have been crammed into a facility designed for 125 people. Well, look, if you're like decimating the scientists in, the departments that are tracking climate change and the effects of climate change, and you need cost analysis for how many people can you pack into a train car. Now, we already have how to stack slaves in a slave ship. We already have a schematic for that. In fact, many schematics. But we're modern now, and they may be putting the scientific method into how many people they can cram into a train car. And what better way to test that out? In facilities in which they're cramming people in right now. I mean, after all, Trump has only been talking about his final solution since he came down the escalator. Cy Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. 3 of President Obama's top national security officials publicly denounced Trump for lying about Obama's actions toward the murderous dictator of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. President Obama wanted to meet, and Chairman Kim would not meet him. The Obama administration was begging for a meeting, Trump said Sunday after meeting with Kim in North Korea. They were begging for meetings constantly, and Chairman Kim would not meet with them. At the risk of stating the obvious, this is horseshit, Susan Rice, who served as Obama's UN ambassador and national security advisor, responded. Rice's admonition was echoed by other high-level officials who dealt with national security under Obama. Trump is lying. I was there for all 8 years. Obama never sought a meeting with Kim Jong-un. Ben Rhodes, Obama's deputy national security advisor for strategic communications, wrote. James Clapper, Obama's director of national intelligence, went on CNN to denounce Trump's false statements. You know where he's going and where he's getting that, Clapper said Sunday. In all the deliberations I participated in on North Korea during the Obama administration, I can recall no instance whatever where President Obama ever indicated any interest whatsoever in meeting with Chairman Kim. Trump's fictitious comments followed an hour-long meeting with Kim on North Korean soil, with Trump becoming the first U.S. president to visit that country. Experts question the wisdom of Trump's actions, which seemed more focused on getting positive media coverage and a good photo op than resolving ongoing issues with North Korea, because who else does that on the world stage? Who does that? And who would demand that America grovel to North Korea? Who would do that? Trump has a master. We know that already. The meeting was strong on optics, but weak on substance. Andrei Landkoff, a professor at Kookmin University in Seoul, told the Washington Post, I'm not against diplomacy, but this is reality TV, Victor Cha. George W. Bush's top advisor in North Korea said in response to the meeting, describing it as a circus. If nothing of substance comes of the meeting, Cha added, it will be just some nice pics and pageantry. Well, that's all that's important to this guy. And making sure he pays his debt to Vlad. The reason we're not getting anything in return for this groveling from North Korea is because that is one of the prices that Trump owes Vlad. Now, Trump's second meeting with Kim was a disaster. Despite Trump trading love letters back and forth with Kim, there has been little to show for his efforts other than photo ops and lies, as I mentioned just now. Trump owes, and Trump is now paying. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from the break, we're going to go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. By now, it's almost common knowledge that spending time in nature is good for you. Areas with more trees tend to be less polluted, so spending time there allows you to breathe easier. Spending time outdoors has been linked with reduced blood pressure and stress, and seems to motivate people to exercise more.
So it'll come as no surprise that there's research showing that spending time in nature is good. I mean, that's been known for millennia. There's dozens of papers showing that.
University of Exeter Medical School researcher Matthew P. White.
We get this idea. Patients are coming to us and they're saying, well, doctor, how long should I spend? And the doctor's saying, I don't really know.
So White and his team decided to find out by using data collected from nearly 20,000 people in England through the Monitor of Engagement with the Natural Environment survey. And their answer? 2 hours a week. People who spent at least that much time amid nature, either all at once or totaled over several shorter visits, were more likely to report good health and psychological well-being than those with no nature exposure. Remarkably, the researchers found that less than 2 hours offered no significant benefits. So what's so special about 2 hours?
I have absolutely no idea, really. We didn't have an a priori guess at what this would be, this threshold. It emerged, and I'd be lying if I said, we'd predicted this. I don't know.
Even more noteworthy, the 2-hour benchmark applied to men and women, to older and younger folks, to people from different ethnic backgrounds, occupational groups, socioeconomic levels, and so on. Even people with long-term illnesses or disabilities benefited from time spent in nature, as long as it was at least 120 minutes per week. The study is in the journal Scientific Reports. While the findings are based on a tremendous number of people, White cautions that it's really just a correlation. Nobody knows why or how nature has this benefit, or even if the findings will stand up to more rigorous investigation.
I want to be really clear about this. This is very early stages. We're not saying everybody has to do 120. This was really to start the conversation of saying, what would a threshold look like? What research do we need to take it to the next step before doctors can have the true confidence to work with their patients? But it's certainly a starting point.
Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
For an expectant mother, taking care of her developing baby means taking good care of herself. One way she can do this is by ensuring she gets vaccinated. If a woman is or might be pregnant during flu season, it's especially important to get her annual flu shot, preferably before the end of October. In addition, women should be vaccinated against whooping cough during the 3rd trimester of each pregnancy. Failure to get vaccinated places both mother and baby at increased risk for serious complications of these infections, including hospitalization and even death. If you're pregnant or planning to get pregnant, ask your healthcare provider when you should get your vaccines. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO. This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The Supreme Court has ruled that a towering 40-foot-tall Christian cross may remain on public land in Blandesburg, Maryland. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. It's hard to reconcile this recent Supreme Court decision called American Legion versus American Humanist Association with the First Amendment guaranteeing a wall of separation between church and state. The Supreme Court prior to this has consistently ruled that the Establishment Clause prohibits any governmental action that favors one religion over another. There is, however, a silver lining. The Supreme Court's ruling was narrow and based on the facts and circumstances surrounding this particular monument, which is nearly 100 years old and evocative of what the court says is the particular symbolism singular to memories of World War I. Given that, there is a strong argument to be made in the future that this Supreme Court decision is not a license for government officials to erect or maintain new religious displays. Freedom of religion, that wall of separation between church and state, is a venerable right, but it is also a vulnerable right, a right that requires our attention and vigilance if it is to remain a pillar of democracy and freedom. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1892. That was the day that 3,800 workers at the Carnegie Steel Company in Homestead, Pennsylvania, were thrown into the streets and locked out of their jobs. The plant was located 7 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. The general manager of the plant, Henry Clay Frick, was determined to break the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers Union. The union had won a strong contract 3 years before, and Frick wanted to weaken their position. The union only represented the skilled workers in the plant. Frick calculated he could break the union because they only accounted for less than a fifth of the workforce. But when Frick began to slash wages and demand increased production, even the unorganized workers voted overwhelmingly to support a strike. The workers refused to accept the changes, and Frick locked them out. Conveniently, Andrew Carnegie was traveling in England and Scotland during the conflict, but he supported his manager's decision. Carnegie sent Frick a message reading, "We approve of anything you do. We are with you to the end." Frick ordered the construction of a giant wall around the plant. The wall stretched 3 miles long and 12 feet high and was topped with sharp barbed wire. The workers called it Fort Frick. They, in turn, organized Homestead. Picket shifts and patrols were formed. Frick sent in his personal army of 300 Pinkertons on a barge to try and sneak into town. The workers' patrol spotted the barge and sounded an alarm. Frick's Pinkertons were met by thousands of workers in a bloody battle. 9 workers and 3 Pinkertons were killed. In the end, Pennsylvania's governor sent in the state militia, thus clearing the way for scabs to enter the plant.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Reports of lewd and cruel social media posts about migrants allegedly made by Border Patrol agents are being investigated. The posts were found in a closed Facebook group for current and former Border Patrol agents. This, according to the investigative reporting group ProPublica. The page reportedly features sexually explicit posts about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and comments questioning the authenticity of a photo of a drowned man and his young daughter. 21 House Democrats, including AOC, toured facilities in Texas where they were forced to relinquish their phones and not allowed to take pictures. They questioned whether they were seeing real conditions or a sanitized version. AOC tweeted that people are drinking out of toilets. The head of operations for U.S. Border Patrol denies this, saying there are, quote, ample supplies in the facilities. Ocasio-Cortez also called out the behavior of some of the Border Patrol agents, saying she saw some agents laughing in front of members of Congress and screamed at others for trying to take selfies with her before she toured the facility. Quote, I was not safe from the officers, she said.
After visiting 3 of those centers today, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, quote, now I've seen the inside of these facilities. It's not just the kids, it's everyone. People drinking out of toilets, officers laughing in front of members of Congress. I brought it up to their superiors. They said officers are under stress and act out sometimes. No accountability. CNN's Nick Valencia is in Clint, Texas, where one migrant detention center for children is located. Nick, some of these members of Congress just spoke. What else are they saying?
Well, they were in there for about an hour total, Jake, and it was Chairman Joaquin Castro that spoke first for the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. He called the conditions dehumanizing, saying that this country is in a very dark place.
When we went into the cell, it was clear that the water was not running. There was a toilet, but there was no running water for people to drink. In fact, one of the women said that she was told by an agent to drink water out of the toilet.
Some of the members emerged emotional. It was Representative Ayanna Pressley who came out and was comforted briefly while she made her impassioned comments saying that she will always speak truth to power. These congressmen and women saw things today that they wish they hadn't, Jake.
What a difference a debate makes. Senator Kamala Harris's strong performance in the first presidential debate of the season launched her into the top tier of the Democratic primary race. This as former Vice President Joe Biden took a major hit and saw his lead almost entirely evaporate. According to a new CNN poll released Monday afternoon, Harris has more than doubled her support since May, jumping to 17% from 8%. Meanwhile, Biden's now once 14-point lead over Bernie Sanders has plummeted to a 5-point lead over second-place Harris. In this new CNN poll, Elizabeth Warren sits in third place at 15%, while Sanders falls to fourth with 14%. No one else among the 25 declared candidates hits 5%. The next debates are July 30th and 31st in Detroit, with the third scheduled for mid-September, when the threshold rises for candidate inclusions. Well, after first postponing his announced roundup of undocumented immigrants, Donald Trump announced that said raids and deportations by Immigration and Customs Enforcement will happen after Independence Day. Quote, after July 4th, a lot of people are going to be brought back out. People that come up may be here for a short while, but they're going to be gone. They're going back to their countries, said Trump to reporters on Monday. They go back home. ICE is going to be apprehending them and bringing them back, and we have a very good system for that, and it's been very effective, and it will be very effective. Ugh. Trump also said U.S. tariffs on all imports from Mexico, which he threatened last month, are now on hold because he said the Mexican government is cooperating with the United States to slow the migrant surge from Central America across its border with Guatemala. At least 2 Army tanks have arrived in Washington ahead of a 4th of July celebration that Donald Trump has hijacked and says will include military hardware. The Washington Post Greg Miller noting that Donald Trump says the July 4th celebration will have, quote, brand new Sherman tanks, and noting that Sherman tanks haven't been in service since 1957.
Trump has requested an array of military vehicles, including tanks and fighter jets, to be showcased to the Salute to America event in Washington on Thursday evening. The president has taken it upon himself to arrange the festivities, including his own speech from the Lincoln Memorial with military flyovers. But many details have not yet been determined, now with just days to go.
So Salute to America. And I'm going to be here. I'm going to say a few words, and we're going to have planes going overhead, the best fighter jets in the world, and other planes too. And we're going to have some tanks stationed outside. Got to be pretty careful with the tanks because the roads have a tendency not to like to carry heavy tanks, so we have to put them in certain areas. But we have the brand new Sherman tanks.
Engineers have canvassed the Lincoln Memorial to determine whether the weight of the military vehicles might ruin the historic site. That's according to Washington Post. The Post reports the price tag for this event could be in the millions of dollars just for the air power alone.
And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it alone. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 63 degrees Fahrenheit, high slated in the low 80s. Overnight lows remain in the upper 50s to low 60s. Tomorrow expecting a high in the low to mid 80s. 4th of July through the weekend looks like we'll be hovering between the mid 80s to maybe a low 90s here and there, at least for part of the day. Winds currently are out of the south, light and variable, and will be shifting out of the northwest in just about an hour or two, picking up to its usual 5 to 10 miles per hour. And I must say, we had some gusts that were pretty stiff yesterday, which I consider to be fun. Other people don't, but I thought it was fun. We'll be shifting again out of the north-northwest at 5 to 10 miles tonight and remaining so tomorrow, and mostly through 4th of July and the weekend at that 5 to 10 mile per hour clip. Grass pollen is still high. The air quality index is in the good range at 11 parts per million here in the region, and the daytime UV index is very high at 9, so do take care. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.9 inches. Visibility is down to 7 miles. We do have somewhat of a cloud cover. And let's see. Oh, and relative humidity is at 80%. Well, that says it right there. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 72 and fair. Paris is 79 and sunny. Oh, they've come down in temperature. Good. Rome is 92 and sunny. Kiev is 78 and fair. Kabul is 85 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 78 with rain. Tokyo is 75 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia, in the throes of their winter, is 48 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 58 and partly cloudy. And New York is 84 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Tom Balmforth and Gabrielle Terrell-Farber of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russia called on the U.S. to free Russian pilot Konstantin Yaroshenko and proposed a prisoner swap with Washington to win the release of any American national held in Russia. Oh, you mean the guy you kidnapped just, half a year ago? That guy, maybe? The comments may fuel speculation that Moscow is seeking a prisoner exchange involving Paul Whelan, a former U.S. Marine arrested and held in Russia on spying charges that he denies and that he has likened to a political kidnap. Yaroshenko is a pilot serving 20 years in the United States for conspiracy to smuggle cocaine into the country. He was arrested by U.S. Special Forces in Liberia in 2010. Free Yaroshenko, swap him for an American or Americans who are serving their sentence here. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov was quoted as saying. In later comments on the proposal carried by RIA News Agency, Ryabkov said, "It would not be right to discuss exchanging Whelan, given that he had yet to face trial in Russia." He said he had other U.S. nationals in mind as possible swaps. Appearing in court last month, Whelan, who holds U.S., British, Canadian, and Irish passports, and was detained in a Moscow hotel on December 28th, appealed to U.S. President Donald Trump, I'll only say that P word now, to intervene to help him, saying, "We cannot keep America great unless we aggressively protect U.S. nationals wherever they are." Whelan said in May that he was being threatened in prison and subjected to humiliation, and he may come back to the United States in a coma. Conveniently. Ryabkov also urged the U.S. on Monday to return confiscated Russian diplomatic properties as a first step toward mending battered relations between the countries. I told you Trump owes Vlad a lot. And in fact, he owes him more every time Trump pays.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Matthew Chapman of Raw Story brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Rick Snyder, governor of Maine, has become synonymous with disaster and neglect. He presided over the Flint water crisis, endangered thousands of people, and is the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. But none of that deterred Harvard's Kennedy School from announcing he would be granted a year-long paid fellowship with the Taubman Center for State and Local Government Director Jeffrey Liebman, touting his expertise in management, public policy, and promoting civility. Wow, promoting civility in the midst of poisoning your constituents. Oh, they weren't your constituents, they were just residents of Maine? Oh, okay, well, I guess that makes it better. In his last supposed skill of Snyder's promoting civility that drew scorn from New York Magazine's Zach Cheney Rice, Snyder was responsible for appointing the head of Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality, who ensures water safety statewide, and the emergency manager who oversaw the city when Flint's water source was switched in 2014. That was Cheney Rice writing, of course. The former governor also appears to have lied about when he first became aware that Flint's water was unsafe. His administration did not implement emergency procedures until months after they knew about the crisis, while officials continued to insist that the water was safe, despite its foul odor, rust color, and the fact that it was causing hair loss and rashes in people who bathed in it. You know, lead will do that. Apparently none of this matters because Snyder firmly believes in people with differing political views getting along. Well, of course, he was able to tamp down all of the concern over lead poisoning with a very civil approach. Very civil. He has such civility. Well, I think that kind of civility is, I don't know, psychotic. Maybe he needs to go to jail. Will a hospital help him? I doubt it. Incarcerate him and the others. Well, on those good words, we come to the end of our broadcast period for this show. But you do know that Netroots Radio's got a broadcast on, so we'll meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.